Wareham Conservation Commission meeting. Mr. Baptiste, we do a roll call, please.
Yes, we can. Members present.
Mary?
Mary Taggett. Dave Hunt. Myself, Ken Baptiste. I don't have a mic. How's that? Jim Smith, Rob Lassen, Chair Sandy Bichette, Sandy Slavin, and David Bichette, the agent. Yeah, I'm having a rough day today.
Thank you. I think you got them all. We have 2 minutes. One set of minutes is March 3rd, 2004. Yes, you heard me, 2004. It's 16 years old. Kenny was the only one here at the time.
Motion to accept.
Well,
Second.
well, I move to accept the minutes under the law of necessity is probably a good way of putting it. That's your motion? Yep. And I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain? 600. Only because it's...
We have to do that.
Yes, and we do have a few more old minutes that they're being worked on, so we'll get them when we get them. So we also have a set of minutes from October 16th, 2019. I've looked at them. I have no problem. I need a motion to accept them.
So moved.
I have that motion.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. I will sign the minutes at the end of the meeting. The next one we have is continued public hearings. We have Sure Cran Services. Anybody here for that?
Yes.
Please come forward and identify yourself.
Maria Furstenberg with TRC.
Okay. Mr. Pichette will read to the project.
Did you say you had some revised plans to submit?
Yeah, I sent them to you.
Yeah, I got them electronically, but did you bring hard copies?
I do have hard copies.
Okay.
Great. This project site is at lot 1012 off Charge Pond Road, and this application is to approve wetland resource area delineations submitted for approval at this property. Resource area delineations are for bordering vegetated wetland and for riverfront area. Approximately 2,600 linear feet of bordering vegetated wetland and 600 linear feet of inland bank are shown on the plan. The site was reviewed, and there were some changes made to the wetland line that have been reflected on the revised plan. We had continued this meeting because the original plan submitted was not a surveyed plan that was stamped, so that has now been completed. We do have a DEP file number for the project, so I would recommend the approval of the wetland boundaries as shown on the revised plan.
Would you like to at least pass them out so that Mr. Pichette can have them for the record?
Thank you.
Is there any comments you'd like to make on it?
No, I think he covered everything.
Does anybody would anybody like to have a copy of the plan?
Yeah, we've seen it.
You want one?
No.
I'll take one and stamped. It's 2 sheets. Okay. One of 2. This is a vote to approve the amended lines of wetlands.
You're voting to issue an order of resource area delineation.
That's what we're voting for. I need a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? You got it.
That was easy, huh?
All set, thanks.
Next, continued hearing was a revised notice of intent for Stonebridge Marina. Is there somebody here for that project?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Bob Rogers, GAF Engineering, representing Stonebridge Marina this evening.
Oh, late green card.
He's got new plans.
New pl- So those are old. These are old. Here's the new one. You want to share down there, and you and I can share. And Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
So this project site is at 5 East Boulevard, which is the Stonebridge Marina. And the project involves repairs to an existing bulkhead and maintenance dredging along a coastal bank, within land under the ocean, and within a coastal flood zone. It's proposed to drive vinyl sheet piles in front of the existing wooden bulkhead for a length of approximately 390 feet. The sheet piles would be driven in front of the existing wooden bulkhead, and helical screw anchor dead men would be driven into the bank to anchor the sheet pile bulkhead in place. Sand would be placed in the void space between the existing retaining wall and the new vinyl sheets. Some of the work to drive the sheet piles would be done from the upland side, and some would have to be done from a floating barge or a boat on the water side where it's not accessible from the land. It's also proposed to do maintenance dredging within the approved reconfiguration zone for the marina. The initial plan represented approximately 2,400 cubic yards of material. We had asked for some better detail on that, and so we do have a revised plan in front of us tonight, which does represent the depth to which dredging would be maintained at the site. And that is to approximately 3 feet below the mean low water mark. The mean low water mark is elevation 2.3, so the dredging would be 3 feet below that with 1 foot of overdig. So right now, the proposal is to remove 550 yards, which is represented in the crosshatched area of the revised site plan. We do have a DEP file number for the project. I did have some questions that I spoke to the engineer about in terms of the methodology for how the dredging would be done. I don't know that that's 100% clear at this point. But in general, I believe the work is something that's necessary and would recommend approval of it. And the commission will have to put some conditioning in place to give them the opportunity to discuss and condition the methodology further if need be.
Thank you. Bob, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Just that, so the changes in the plan, as David said, is the hatch. It's also, we have added some notes, 6, 7, and 8 in the upper left-hand corner of the plan. The dredging would be either by suction dredging or bucket dredging. And again, the focus of the initial dredging is on filling the void space between the proposed bulkhead and the existing bulkhead. And so only if there was a need to dredge more material than that would we have to use the dewatering area and actually, truck it off-site or haul it away. So we, I guess we would ask that the public hearing be closed and that we be issued a positive order of conditions with appropriate special conditions for this type of project.
Thank you. Questions on the board? I'll start down this end.
Were we originally talking about permitting them to a depth and deleting the amount of material? Is that going through?
That's what they now have on this.
Well, you had brought up the 500 and something yards, and
Because that's what they sort of represented as what they want to do at this point, and that's the area where it's more shallow.
so I wasn't sure if we put that in the order. Are they stuck to that, or?
Yeah, we're not going to specify a
Okay.
certain yardage.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all.
Mr. Smith? Nothing. Down the other end, I'll start Kenny. Dave? Barry? Before I ask the public, there is a note, number 4. It said, pipe through the new bulkhead and install tide gate. Is that in case there's any tide going on to the parking area to flow back?
Well, so there's an existing 4-inch pipe there. There's just a small section of trench drain, so there's an existing pipe that goes out of the bulkhead in that location.
So it's already
So,
there? You just wanted
correct.
to go through
We
the
need,
new
so
bulkhead?
it'll need to be extended a foot
Okay.
to go out the face of the new bulkhead.
Thank you. Any questions in the public for or against this project? I'm seeing none, and I have no further questions on the board. Folks, I need a motion to close the hearing, if that's what you'd like.
Motion to
See them?
close?
I have a motion to close the hearing. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed. Now, what is your pleasure?
There was some mention of methodology language, and I don't know anything about that, so my pleasure is to not be responsible.
Motion to approve with the standard stipulations for the plan.
And may I add to that? The time of year of restriction, nothing between January 15th and June 30th. The access material will be stored off-site. The loam and seed, no fertilizer. Not even low grade, you're too close to the water. No, you're going to loam and seed the disturbed area. I'd like to add to the condition, no fertilizer.
That's fine.
Okay. What did we have? Dewatering capability, off-site storage. Did I miss anything, Mr. Pichette?
Just to add a condition that the applicant would have to present information relative to the methodology of how they're going to dredge, and that the commission would have the opportunity to add further conditions if need be, depending on their methodology.
That's my motion.
I guess that's your motion in many pieces. I need a second. Second, I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? We're done.
Thank you. Are you going to do any more continueds or just,
Well,
Go
we're
ahead.
going to, we'll probably go right into, now at 7:15, we'll go right into the hearings.
okay.
First one, please.
Okay. Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7:15 p.m. Request determination of applicability for Callie and Denise Wolf, care of GAF Engineering, 266 Main Street, Wareham, to construct a shed located on the Assessors Map 50D, lots 246 and 247, 15 Howard Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. No, I have a copy.
Madam Chair, for the record, Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
Thank you. Give us a second to handle our paperwork. When you're ready. Mr. Bichette will read to the project. Has the gentleman share?
This project is at 15 Howard Street in the Swifts Beach area, and the project involves the construction of a shed in the buffer zone to a coastal bank and in a coastal flood zone. An 8x10 shed is proposed approximately 30 feet from the top of the coastal bank and within flood zone AE elevation 15. The location of the shed is in the front yard of the house, which is in the area closer to the street. The site is a small lot. It is relatively flat. There's no grade changes proposed. So they do meet the setback to the coastal bank, so I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative determination number 2.
Bob, anything to add?
No, Madam Chair.
Questions on the board?
None?
No.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for or against this project?
Motion
Seeing
to
none,
close?
I have a motion to close.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The hearing is closed.
Motion to grant with a -2 determination.
I have a motion to grant with a -2. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Here's your paperwork.
Thank you.
Thank you. You get the next one, too?
No.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Thank you. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7:15 p.m. on the amended order of conditions for NBE Management Corporation, care of GAF Engineering, 266 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got your green cards. Now, please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Brian Grady with GAF Engineering.
Attorney Sheila Tierney on behalf of GAF Engineering. Oh, excuse me, on behalf of the petitioner.
And your first name again? I missed it.
Sheila.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is at 11 Elizabeth Street in the Rose Point area. And this site has been given an address change, and it's now going to be known as an address on Arnold Street. And the revised plan that you have does reflect the new address. This request is to amend an order of conditions to allow a plan change to the project and to put the order in the new applicant's name. The originally approved project involved the construction of a single-family dwelling in the buffer zone to wetlands and a wetland crossing for the driveway access to the lot. A replication area was approved as part of the project as well. The proposed change to the plan is to have a duplex instead of a single-family house. The footprint of alteration is the same as what was originally approved, and the driveway access will remain in the same location. The limit of work is approximately 30 feet from the edge of the wetland. There's a 3,109 square foot replication area, and this also is in the same location that was originally approved. So I would recommend the approval of the amended order of conditions with the same conditions that were granted on the original order.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add at this time, no.
No, thank you.
Questions on the board?
No.
For the record, I just wanted to let people, I've seen this project as a sewer commissioner, so I've had some prior insight into this project before coming before us. Just wanted to put that out there. Okay, anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none. I have a motion to close.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing's closed.
Move to grant with the same orders as the original order.
I have a motion to grant the same conditions as previous with the changes as presented. I need a second.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, opposed, abstained, whichever. We're done. Please see Mr. Bishop before you start any work. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Wareham Road, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7:15, on the amended order of conditions for Robert and Mary Ellen Stone, care of Schneider, d'Avignon and Leon, 1 County Road, Post Office Box 480, Mattapoisett, Massachusetts, to amend an order of conditions located on Assessors Map 78, Block 2, Lot 130, 12 Kennedy Street, West Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Dave DeVignan, from Schneider, DeVignan, Leone, representing.
Thank you. Richette will read to the, we have our green cards. Richette will read to the project. Got it.
So this project site is at 12 Kennedy Street in the Rose Point area. And this application is to request a plan change to a project that was previously approved by the commission that involved the demolition of an existing dwelling and the reconstruction of a new dwelling within the riverfront area of the Sippican River and in the buffer zone to a coastal bank. The originally approved project proposed to remove the existing dwelling and construct a new, larger dwelling that would be set back slightly from the coastal bank from the existing dwelling. The proposed change is to, instead of creating the larger home, just reconstruct a new home on the same original footprint, reducing the size of the structure that was originally approved. Hay bales and silt fence would be placed between the work and the resource area as shown on the plan. So I would recommend the issuance of the amended order of conditions with the standard conditions and the added condition that there be no future expansion of the structure or decks or patios or anything like that towards the river or within the 30-foot no activity zone to the coastal bank.
No new construction of patio, deck, or similar any closer to the coastal bank, right?
Right.
I'm not writing very fast tonight. Dave, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, Madam Chair, I'm all set. I would agree.
We had quite a discussion on this one initially, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes. More than one.
Multiple occasions.
Yes. Questions? questions on the board?
No.
Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Motion closed.
I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed.
Motion to grant the amended order with the additional stipulation that no further expansion is to be done to any building decks or anything else closer to the road.
That is the motion.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained.
Thank you.
See Mr. Bichette before you start anything? Okay, ready for the next one?
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 5th at 2020, at 7:15 PM, on the notice of intent for BMFN LLC, care of Bracken Engineering, 49 Herring Pond Road, Pleasant Bay, Massachusetts, to construct a garage and breezeway associated with grading associated on Assessors Map 26, Lot 1000-DI, 248 Great Neck Road, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Rob DeWar on behalf of Bracken Engineering.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is at 248 Great Neck Road, and the project involves the construction of a breezeway and garage in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland at the site. A 24 by 54-foot garage with an 8-foot wide breezeway in an L shape that's approximately 50 feet long is proposed, and this is approximately 40 feet from the edge of the wetland at its closest point. The wetland is on the other side of the driveway from where the proposed work is. They are proposing a underground storage chamber to handle roof runoff from the structure. There would be some minor grading around the structure as shown, and they do show silt fence between the work and the resource area. I would recommend using both hay bales and silt fence as we typically require. The only thing I didn't get is a DEP file number for the project. I don't know if you happen to receive it.
I checked right before the meeting started, and there was still no number listed.
Yeah, so I have no issue with the project, but at this time I'd have to recommend a continuance since we don't have a DEP file number for the project.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I'd certainly welcome any discussion over the project or questions, and hopes to get everything cleared up before the next meeting, just though we're only waiting for the file number.
Okay, questions on the board?
No, I have none.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for or against this project? Please come forward and identify yourself. This will be continued,
Thank you.
but Mrs. Whiteside would like to have a comment.
This is a map, or a picture, probably a NASA picture. It was taken many, many years ago, and it shows where the Sacred Heart Cemetery.
You're going to have to get,
Oh, am I?
yes. Bob, can you pick up that picture on the camera?
You want me to put it on the easel?
And you're going to have to identify yourself for the record once you get to a mic.
Okay, thanks. My name is Judith Whiteside. I live at 253 Great Neck Road, which is, may I? It's here, okay? This picture is over 50 years old. I believe it's either a NASA picture or I believe it's a NASA picture. The Sacred Heart Seminary building is here. This is the end of Great Neck Road. The stable buildings are here. These are all private driveways, not public roads. There is no public access. And this actually, if you look closely, there's a hunter in his car right there in what is now the driveway down to what I call the Cheever Murata. I'm not sure the new owner's name.
It's like the
yeah.
BMFN,
Yeah, okay.
It's a LLC.
So what you can see by looking at this is the water courses that run through this property. There is a culvert in here, which regularly fails. This area here regularly, when we have rain, floods to overflow the road. So I'm concerned about this marsh, the marsh degradation. There's a pond here and a pond here. And so I'm very concerned about the water courses, the natural water courses that have been there and are evidenced there, just for your information. That's yours.
Thank you, Rob. Has any map work been done on where those particular water areas flow? Right, I don't quite see them on the map, or did I miss them?
No, we didn't actually do a detailed topo that far up on the driveway, closer, just because it was so far outside of the project area. So we don't have, say, like contour information enough to do any kind of detailed, like, hydrological analysis. But on that stretch of the driveway, we're not proposing any work anyway, so there would be no change to the natural flowing of the
So
water.
the driveway that exists now would either flood, or it had a culvert underneath it, and that's not going to change at all?
No. No, the only change we're doing to the driveway is a very small expansion. Just where the garage meets, we're just going to pave that, or it's not even paved, excuse me, it's just an expansion of a gravel driveway. But outside of that, the natural flow, further up, if we're looking at the old photo, further up here, there's no change to that stretch of driveway at all, so.
And this property does have a lot of water, wetlands in front of it, correct? And there's nothing?
Correct.
You're planning to do nothing?
No, there's no work proposed in the actual
Garage is
resource
on the
areas.
opposite side of the driveway from the wetland, and you're not going to?
Nope, there's no work in the wetlands. You see, part of the breezeway is outside of the 100-foot buffer, and the garage is just inside of it, and then portions of the breezeway.
Thank you. Mrs. Whiteside, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak for or against this project?
I would like to speak for it.
Okay, come on in and identify yourself, please.
My name is Regina Pertel, and I'm the Sanctuary Director of the newly acquired Sacred Heart property, now part of Great Neck Wildlife Sanctuary of Mass Audubon. And the issues that we have with this is first and foremost, the proposed garage will be within the 100-foot buffer, buffering protected vegetation buffer zone. And we feel like we just want to make sure, when we know that you guys are going to do a great job or putting in conditions to protect the wetland, we just want to make sure of that is addressed. And then the other piece is that there is a low-value shed and carport that extends over the boundary into our land. And this is the perfect opportunity to suggest that be removed.
Okay.
And furthermore, some conditions that we would say, because we know that those things happen. buildings get put over the line because it's hard to draw that line.
Correct. It's been there for quite a while.
Yes. And then the other part that makes it hard to define is exactly where the boundary is. If you're cutting trees to make way for this, which it sounds like you are, to make sure that you're staying on your land, the property owners?
Prior to any clearing, we would, clearly delineate the property line there. We do
Right.
have the lines surveyed, the properties,
Okay,
the parcels
fantastic.
surveyed. Yep.
And then same for not only litter removal during, and excavation material during the project, but even afterward, that the property owner really understand that their litter, there's a proper way to dispose of litter with ecological,
Sure.
notions versus just dumping it on someone else's land, which we have no accusation against this landowner, but across the state, we certainly run into that trouble.
Okay.
Periodically. So basically, a comprehensive assessment of the impact of the wetland would be appropriate. And then if there's any kind of nature-based solution, so if it's about planting vegetation to sort of, I think that what I approve of the project is that you have thought about the sheet runoff off of the roof.
Sure, yeah. So we are showing a small amount of clearing of the existing tree line through here, but I should have some site pictures. It's not a heavily forested area at that point. The heavily forested part really starts sort of beyond this. It's shrubby and there are trees there, but it's not the heavily forested spot. And then to accommodate, for the excess runoff from the roof that would normally be infiltrated through the gravel driveway portion here and sort of the lawn and shrubby areas beyond, we do have the subsurface drainage. So there won't be any increase in flow, especially sheet flow coming across the driveway to the wetlands.
That's our concern, yeah. So you're expanding the more hard Scrabble surface?
Yeah, so even though there's an expansion of impervious surface, the roof, it'll be accounted for, by subsurface infiltration, both here and on the other side to account also for the breezeway up
Okay.
there.
And is it a gable roof or is it a shed roof?
We're still finalizing the roof line in the architectural drawings.
Because I think to the extent that we want to reduce sort of a shear of surface water sheeting across into the wetland, carrying whatever.
Well, they'll be captured by the gutters and then redirected.
Okay.
So these are actually tanks that are buried. They look like an
Okay.
arch, and all the gutters and
Yeah,
roof leaders are
Great.
directed there.
It appeared that you had taken that into account, so I commend that, and I just wanted to point out that that's something we're thinking about.
So you have 2 sites to collect the runoff.
We do, yep.
Okay.
And it'll be up to the contractor to coordinate with us and the owner, the final, location of them, but they will be both, on this side and on the other side of the garage, next to the breezeway, within a couple of feet of that location.
Are you going to do any plantings when you're done? Or it's,
Are they going to just restore the land to its, natural
so
state as
I
it
will
is
put in
now?
an order, I will put in the condition like anything else, very low nitrogen reducing fertilizer if any grass
Absolutely.
is planted.
And I think that's where that nature-based solutions could be. It's really choosing plants that are native. I mean, we own a conservation restriction on the bulk of the parcel, right? So there's a building envelope that this fits it within. But the reason that we have a conservation restriction is the high conservation value for the property. And some of it fits within the coastal pine barren ecosystem that has global significance. And so we have amphibians, reptiles of note, in addition to potentially someday New England cottontail could find home in our area if we ever. So just keeping those options open. So if there's any kind of nature-based choices, nature-informed choices of vegetation type, surface type,
Then we will ask that if there's any planting done, that Mr. Pichette approves them before the planting is done. The use of low nitrogen fertilizer is part of our standard conditions, but I'd like to repeat it to everybody. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to or for this project? I need a motion to continue missing the DEP filing.
Motion?
I have a motion to continue
To February 19th.
to February 19th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, we're continued waiting for the final documents.
Thank you very much.
You understand what they're asking? What-
For the DEP file number?
No, what the two ladies have mentioned about runoffs and plantings and...
Sure. We can certainly provide a more detailed stormwater report and specify the plantings that would be, I mean,
Okay.
would you like to see a planting plan, or is a note on the plan just
Just to see
specifying
Mr.
native vegetation to
native
be used?
vegetation, and have Mr. Pichette approve it before you dig the holes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in 19. Okay.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for Stephen Ardiello, okay, and Bow Marriage Consulting LLC, care of Farland Corporation, 401 County Street, New Bedford, Massachusetts, to replace soil absorption system and associated grading associated on Assessors Map 86, Lot 1004A and 1004B, 47 Fearing Hill Road, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Stevie Cavallo of Farland Corp.
Do you have a green card? No, I haven't. Thank you. Here we go.
I also have some.
Updated plans?
Yeah.
Okay. Bring them. Excuse me, we are continuing our hearing. Can you please take it to the hall? Way. Thank you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project. Judy, can you shut the door? Thank you.
Okay, so this project site is at 47 Faring Hill Road, and the project involves upgrading a septic system at this site within a coastal flood zone. And some of the work is within the riverfront area of the Wewianick River. An existing septic system is to be replaced with a new Title V nitrogen-reducing system. And the new system is proposed to be located outside the 150-foot from the wetland. When I reviewed the site, I did note that there was some wetlands on the other side of Faring Hill Road that weren't really clearly identified, and so I had brought that up to the engineer. And so I'm assuming that's why we've got a revised plan. And maybe that issue can be discussed. Again, it is a septic upgrade. They have the septic system located, I think, in the best place that they can place it in terms of distance from wetlands and so forth. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the project, but I just wanted the plan to be accurate to show the extent of all wetlands, not just the ones on the subject property.
So,
Stevie, your comments, please.
sure. So, after speaking to Mr. Prachette, we updated the plan based on GIS information, and added the buffers. And we do understand that GIS is approximate, it's not an delineation. But given the situation and the fact that we've got a 100-foot well setback we need to maintain, there is a 200-foot riparian zone here on the plans. I'm not sure why they didn't actually print, but the label is there, and we could certainly provide plans that actually show them, show that riparian line. So this septic, the placement of it is outside what we believe is the 100. There could be a little bit of leeway with regards to the wetland resources across the street. It is within 150 foot. I just went to the Board of Health hearing earlier today. We are going to have to put a denitrification system. So with regards to the wetlands across the street, whether or not, they're 10 feet closer to the road, there's really going to be no change to the to the design of the system. So we feel at this time it's it's more of a burden on the applicant to get the owner's permission across the street. There's actually 2 properties that the wetlands may be on, and then to have the wetland scientists go back out, delineate the wetlands, and then to have the survey crew go back out and locate it. It's a 50-foot right-of-way, so unless the wetlands are right up against the right-of-way, we're going to be outside the 50-foot. And there's, again, no other real, location for this leaching field.
Does that answer your questions?
It does, but I still don't think it's appropriate. The wetlands need to be shown accurately versus the GIS location, because based on their location, you may need further variances from the Board of Health. So if it's within a given distance, then you might have to request a variance to certain setbacks. So that's why they all need to be accurately represented. So the GIS layer is, often not incredibly accurate. So that's the whole reason to have a detailed plan. We didn't get a DEP file number for this project, and so we're going to have to, or I would recommend a continuance, and it sounds like you have to upgrade the plan anyway for the nitrogen-reducing system. My recommendation to the board would be that we should be seeing accurate distances to wetlands. Otherwise, you just have a vague plan. So that's just my recommendation. The board can decide how you want to address it.
So we're missing that from cross from Faring Hill, correct?
Yeah,
It's correct on the property, but we're missing the relationship to what's across the street.
correct.
Questions on the board?
No questions.
No, I agree with a better plan would if we could
Okay.
delineate that.
Is there anybody in the audience to speak for or against this project? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself, knowing that this hearing will be continued.
My name is David Silva. I live at 55 Faring Hill Road. And I just, I had a question. I wasn't quite sure of the, being this Conservation Commission, but my well is located in the right rear of my property, and I don't know what the buffer zone is to be, how far away you are from my well cap. I know you're coming towards my property with this, and I'm just concerned about that, to see if there's a, especially with these new systems. I'm not familiar with the nitrogen-based release.
Sure. So we actually revisited the property and located the well, and the setback's 100 feet to the well, and we show that 100-foot arc here. So the soil absorption system's outside of that 100 feet. So it's more than 100. It's probably closer to 100 and maybe 10 feet away from your well.
Are you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay, David, thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? We need a continuance. I have a motion to continue.
I just had one quick question. If we cannot get permission because the property owner across the street's like some LLC, how do we go about dealing with that?
Michelle, let you handle that one.
I've had conversation with DEP and the wetland scientist. And, I asked him what his experience was. He says, I've been kicked off a site before for being on the property without permission. Some property owners don't appreciate that, and it's understandable. I've called DEP, spoke to 2 different people there, and they said if you can get permission, great. If not, I think you just have to bring that to the commission and let them know. So I just want to...
Yeah, I mean, if you have a scenario where the property owner flat out refuses to allow you to go on the land, then I guess you may not be able to do that.
But in that situation, would you prefer us to just call the wetland line at the edge of the 50-foot right-of-way, which, I mean, is probably the worst-case scenario? I mean, we've got a pretty wide paved area there, and we're not going to be within 50 feet of the wetland, with the septic, so maybe just at that.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I think the wetland is pretty much up to the wetlands, or up to the road layout in that particular area. That's why when I looked at the GIS, I knew it was not really incredibly accurate. So we just want the plan to be accurate so that the Board of Health is clear on it. Everybody knows that this exists, and then if they're fine with it, then it's no big deal.
I just feel, given it's an LLC, we may be having a hard time getting permission. And just in the interest of time in the project, just call the wetland line at the edge of the 50-foot right-of-way. We'll show the 50 and 100-foot, and if we've got to ask for variances from from the Board of Health, we'll do that.
And on one other sort of side note, as a general question, while there's engineers and surveyors here, I was under the assumption that surveyors could go on private property for the purposes of surveying property lines, for doing survey work that needs to be done in order to generate plans. Is that not the case?
Surveying is a little different than delineating basically a wetland or some sort of property restriction. I was always told we're allowed to go on anybody's property with notice. So if we give them notice, we have the right to locate, whatever it is we're doing, topography, survey control, what we need to do our job. As far as delineating, I asked the wetland scientist, and he said we need permission, so.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that clearly, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? We need a motion to continue until February 19th.
Right.
So moved.
I need a motion to continue the hearing until February 19th. I heard a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. We're continued, and we'll see you on the 19th, hopefully.
Thank you.
With a DEP file number. I know, I'm almost eating it now. Okay, next one, please.
Okay, notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held at Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for William McKenzie, care of Daniel McKenzie, 30 Cromwell Road, Sagamore Beach, Massachusetts, to replace an existing septic system with a new Title V septic system located on Assessors Map 99, Lot 1033, 1182 Main Street, West Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Dan McKenzie, representing my dad, the owner of the property, William
Thank
McKenzie.
you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Okay, this property site is at 1182 Main Street, and the project involves upgrading a septic system in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. An existing septic system is to be replaced with a new nitrogen-reducing Title V septic system. The new leach field would be approximately 72 feet from the edge of the wetland. And the new leach field is adjacent to where the old field currently is. And this is proposed to be abandoned in place. A new septic tank is to be installed near the old septic tank, which is also proposed to be abandoned in place. I did have a question or concern about that because typically it's preferable to see the old tank removed instead of abandoned in place. And it also looks like the old tank is more or less possibly in the way of the new tank, based on the plan anyway. So I would just recommend that the old tank be removed. That would be the preference. Other than that, it's a septic upgrade. I would recommend that the project be approved. We do have a DEP file number, and just with the only issue being the tank removal. So I don't know if that's a major issue or not. Maybe we can.
Yeah, not being the designer of the project, as far as I know, that's been perfectly acceptable, that they fill in the tank. As I understand, the Board of Health's already approved the plan the way it is. Obviously, as far as the new tank, the location, I think that's just sort of a drafting error. I'm certainly not expecting them to put the tank in way of where the old tank is.
Yeah.
So I believe I've seen that done before, is the tank is pumped and then filled.
Are they not crushing and filling them anymore?
Well, some do that or have proposed it. This one just sort of proposes to punch a hole in the bottom of it and fill it with sand. So I'm always leery of then somebody deciding, okay, I'm gonna hook into this for a washing machine and not put it in
When
the
I hooked
septic.
here, when I bought my place and I hooked here, they required me to just crush the top, fill it with dirt. So it was functionally useless anyway, even if I dug it out.
Yeah, was that a septic tank or was it just a old cesspool?
No, it was a tank, yeah.
Same thing with our tank. When we hooked to town sewer, we didn't remove it, we just crushed it and
Right.
pumped it, crushed it, and
Yeah, it's
covered it.
easy enough for the backhoe to just crush the
Right,
top
yeah,
end and
then that's
fill it up.
fine. Other than that, I don't have any other questions.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Questions on the board?
Nope.
Seeing around? Anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Motion to close.
I have a motion to close.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed.
Motion to grant with standard conditions and the old tank to either be removed or filled.
Okay. I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. Hearing is closed. We have your standard order of conditions, and please see Mr. Bichette before you start the work. Just make sure your hay bales and everything else is in place, okay?
Thank you.
Okey dokey. Now, we're back to continued hearings. We have the Buzzards Bay Coalition has requested a continuance until February 19th. Anybody here for that particular project? Seeing none, I need a motion to continue.
Motion.
I have that motion. I need a second. I have a second. The Buzzards Bay Coalition is now continued until 2/19. The next one is Thomas, why can't I pronounce this person's name? Parento at 15 over Jordan Road. There's a continued hearing. This is the one closest to the road or not close to the road?
Closest to the road.
This is closest to the road, which means we had a letter from Gary Buckminster on this particular project, right?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Shedd, it's yours. Oh, please identify yourself for the record.
Bob Rogers, GAF Engineering.
Yeah, so again, this is at 15 Over Jordan Road, and the project involves the construction of a pier, ramp, and float system into Shell Point Bay. A 200-foot pier, ramp, and float system is proposed in land under the ocean, salt marsh, and within a coastal flood zone. The site is also within the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. So we had continued this project because there was a request to do a shellfish survey at the site, which was completed. That information was submitted to us and to the harbor master. He did review the site and did submit comments on the project. And for this particular pier, it was his recommendation or request that this project not be approved. He states that the site is a valuable shellfish area for commercial and recreational shellfishermen, and also a shellfish relay area. And again, it's his recommendation that this one not be approved. We also did get comments from Mass Division of Marine Fisheries on this. They had some comments relative to height of the pier above the salt marsh and shallow water depths at the float end of the structure. And they also did identify the area as shellfish habitat. Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species commented, and they had no negative comments on the project. We did get a DEP file number. So for this project, based on the comments from the harbor master, I would recommend that the project not be approved under the town bylaw. Under the town bylaw, there is a section that states that piers shall not be allowed to be constructed in significant shellfish habitat as determined by Mass Division of Marine Fisheries and/or the Wareham Shellfish Constable.
Bob, any comment?
Yes. So this pier, similar to the other one on the property, this pier was permitted in 1995 to be reconstructed. So in no way is this, just a brand new pier in a shellfish area. So we're applying for it to be reconstructed. There's a total of 13 12-inch diameter pilings that would be in the shellfish area. So you're talking about a loss of only 13 square feet of actual shellfish area. I've tried to reach out to Mr. Buckminster over the past several weeks since the January 15th hearing, and I was unable to do so. And then we get this email at 10 minutes of 5 tonight. So on the one hand, we think that he's extremely overstating the negative impact to the shellfish, whether it's commercial or residential, whether it involves, relocation of contaminated shellfish. You're still going to be able to do that throughout the area and around the pier, and you'll be able to rake cohogs right under the pier if that's what you want to do. But I was fortunate enough to have an email exchange with Mr. Parento today. We do see that there's an opportunity to improve access from the land at this location for shell fishing, and Mr. Parento is also willing to provide some monetary compensation for shellfish propagation. So I would request a continuance for 2 weeks to give us time to discuss those options with Mr. Buckminster. Because if we receive a denial for this pier, which is, again, it's a proposed reconstruction of a pier, granted it hasn't been there for many years, we'd be put in another situation of having to appeal a denial of an order of conditions, and some go the applicant's way, some go the town's way, but I guess we'd like to take 2 weeks to see if we can come to an agreement with the harbor master, which would prevent a denial of the order of conditions.
Do you have a copy of that 1995 reconstruction structure
I have,
document?
we have the license plans from it was a single license plan from 1995, approved by Chapter 91.
Okay.
Was done by Arthur Thompson's office. I had emailed that, I'm sure, to David, and I just don't know if I have it with me.
Available if,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see it, okay.
Yes, yeah, and it was a 99-year license, and unfortunately, or for whatever reason, the Volpes, the prior owners, didn't reconstruct either one of the piers, and so after 5 years, under Chapter 91 regulations, basically the permit becomes null and void.
thank you. Anybody,
So-
anybody question on the boards?
Is there work to be done on the pilings that are already there?
Well, so for this particular pier, it's a wooden pier, so in the shellfish report, you can see there's a couple of pictures of just the remains of the pier on the upland side of the coastal bank, and then there's some wooden pilings that are just lying on the beach, I guess. And then, of course, we had the license plans.
Rob, this is what it looks like now?
But so
So
this
it's
is just...
essentially a new build. Nothing
Yeah, right,
was
well,
there.
right, I mean, you can say reconstructed, we're reconstructing what was previously licensed, and, you know,
Right,
so...
but it's not like there's no disturbance to the ground because all the concrete piers are still
Well, correct, there's
there.
going to be construction disturbance, absolutely, it would be the installation of the piles and
Right.
to get to the floats.
Even on dry land.
But I think we have an opportunity to satisfy Mr. Buckminster. It remains to be seen, I guess, but that's what we'd like to do, so we'd like to continue to February 19th, if the board would allow.
Time for that motion?
There's a copy of that wooden pier that they're talking about replacing. When did we take that? In the snowstorm? Must have been,
a long time
when did we go there?
This year.
Before Thanksgiving, I think. So that, that's what's there now, so you know that what is there is gonna be totally replaced.
Right.
I mean, there's planks missing that I didn't catch in the picture and stuff like that, so so, was there a motion to, anybody else have a question on this, continuing it? Yeah, so, do you have a
Motion to
motion to
continue.
continue?
Second.
I heard a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed to abstain, so we're going to continue until 2:19 with some feedback from the property owner and a discussion with Mr. Buckminster on this.
Yes, hopefully he can accommodate us, a meeting, half hour, an hour of his
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Next one, same Parmento, am I close enough?
Parento.
Parento, this is at 0 over Jordan, which is the one that has the existing stone pylons. Just to keep it different from the wooden here.
So this project site is also off of Over Jordan Road, adjacent to the one we just reviewed, but further away from the road. And the project also involves the construction of a pier, ramp, and float into Shell Point Bay. A 196-foot pier, ramp, and float is proposed inland under the ocean, salt marsh, and within a coastal flood zone. And again, the site is also in the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. Again, the water in this area is fairly shallow at low tide. The float is just above the depth that is necessary to meet the wetland bylaw. The existing concrete support piles would be used to support the structure. 40-foot spans between the pile sets are what are proposed with aluminum span decking. It's also proposed to encapsulate these existing support piles with an additional layer of concrete. And this would increase the footprint of each concrete support pile. The elevation of these supports would be raised slightly so that the pier could reach the required elevation. So again, this hearing had been continued to get a shellfish survey, eelgrass survey, and also comments from the harbor master. So again, that information was provided as far as the shellfish survey. And the harbor master did comment on this pier and felt that this pier was acceptable to be approved since the pilings or the concrete stanchions already exist and this pier was in place more recently. We also did get comments from the Division of Marine Fisheries with similar concerns about height of the pier over the marsh and the shallow water depths at the float end of the structure, and also construction methodology. Natural Heritage stated they had no negative comments on the project. We do have a DEP file number for the project. So with this one, I would recommend the approval of the project and the added conditions that the work be done from, any work that's being done from a floating barge has to be done at higher tides so that the barge doesn't ground out at low tide. And also for the containment of any concrete that is limited to the stanchions and not discarded elsewhere if there's any excess. And I think that's pretty much it.
Did you not mention a eelgrass and shellfish study for this?
Yeah, they did do that.
Oh, they did
Yeah,
do
and
it
there was
already,
no
okay.
findings of eelgrass, and
All right.
we did get the shellfish survey, which was submitted
I
to us
mistook-
and to the harbor
I
master.
mistook that I thought it was coming and
Yeah.
already done. Okay.
Bob, anything to add?
No, it's just, that so that's, Mr. Buckminster has no problem with approving this one, so we'll work on the other one. So I would ask the commission to close the public hearing and issue the standard order of conditions, including the special conditions that Dave mentioned.
Questions on the board?
Nope.
Nope.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none. I take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The hearing is closed. I think we have 3 orders, standard with plus 3 conditions. So who would like to take the hint, take over the conditioning?
Motion to grant with the stipulation of any high tide, any work in the barge be done at high tide.
Containment of, containment of the concrete?
Containment of the concrete spoils or chips or whatever,
And removal of the excess from the site.
and anything be removed from the site.
I have a motion, standard conditions plus
Second.
3. I have 3 conditions. I have a second. All in favor? I opposed, abstained. You're done.
Thank you.
Before you start anything, make sure you and Dave talk
Yeah, it's a
about-
long way away with Chapter 91 licensing. and-
But you got
Yes.
one of the 2 piers are done. There you go. Thank you. The next one, Saba Nazarella. Here's the other pier. Is this a new?
No, same one.
I don't know.
Got it?
Yeah. Oh, please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady, GAF Engineering.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is at 179 Sandwich Road, and this is the Nezarella Farms site. And the project involves expanding a parking and storage area at the existing site within a coastal flood zone. It's planned to excavate back into the hill behind the existing farm stand to bring the grade down to elevation 10 to 13, as shown on the plan for the proposed grades. 2 existing greenhouses are proposed to be removed. 3 storage bins for landscaping materials are proposed within this newly created level area. And this would be on a concrete pad, as shown. Any excess material would be removed from the site. Again, this is in flood zone AE elevation 14. We had continued this hearing because we didn't have a DEP file number, which we now have. So I would recommend the approval of the project based on the latest revised plan that we have, which is dated 1/13/20.
Thank you, Brian. Anything to add?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Questions on the board?
No?
Anybody here speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none. I have a motion to close the hearing. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed.
Motion to grant per the revised plan.
I have a motion to grant. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Done. Please see Dave before you start the work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next hearing is Kenneth Deleuze. They have a requested a continuance until 2/19.
So moved.
I have a motion to continue. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained until 2/19.
Yeah.
There. Now we have enforcement order for Wendy Anderson. Would you like to come forward, please? Mr. Bichette will speak to this enforcement order. Oh, please identify yourself so we have you on record.
My name is Wendy Anderson.
Thank you.
Judith Whiteside.
Thank you.
Okay, so this project site is at 247 Great Neck Road, and this is a situation where there was a stone seawall and a stone jetty constructed out on the beach at this property with no approvals from the commission. So I sent out an enforcement order just so that the owner knew that there was an issue and shouldn't continue doing any work, and asked that they appear tonight to kind of go over the situation so that we can address this and hopefully get this issue squared away. So there was approximately 200 feet of wall that was built in varying sizes in terms of width and height. And then there was a stone jetty that was constructed out onto the beach. It's approximately 40 feet long or so. So these were, projects that were substantial. I'm sure it took a bit of time to get constructed. They are in a coastal flood zone, in a velocity zone, actually, and the way they're built, they're not likely to withstand, punishment from waves. So they're not something that we would have likely approved in the manner in which they were built. So I spoke with Mrs. Anderson, and she explained, the reasoning why she did the work that she did was in an effort to try to prevent further erosion from the beach in front of her property. And obviously, it was just something that, should have gone through the commission in terms of the proper review and permitting. That didn't occur, and so we're where we are now. So Mrs. Anderson, I'm sure, can explain a little bit about it, but basically what I think needs to happen is that the structures that we would not have approved, in my opinion, would need to be removed. And if there's another project that wants to be done to help stabilize the area in front of Mrs. Anderson's property, then I think that's something the commission could entertain. It's just that the way things were handled obviously didn't go through the proper channels, that's all. So we're just here to try to discuss it and get it on track.
What we have passed around the board are some pictures of what is there now. What you also have going around is a hearing from 2009 in which they came before us to stabilize their banking at the property, so you can see what it existed in 2009 and what it looks like now, just so you have some history there as to, they came before us, they got approval to reinforce one of the side of their banking, and so. Now, Mrs. Anderson, did you have something to say to Mr. Bichette's comments?
I'm sorry, if you can specifically ask me a question? No, I mean, it is true that the first project you mentioned, my husband managed, and the latter is of my doing. I'm happy to explain if you'd like me to. I don't know what you want me to explain, but I'm happy to.
Did you have any engineer come back with this design, or?
No, it started out because if anyone, I love my property. I'm a weird person maybe, but I throw rocks a lot. I've always thrown rocks because that's what I've done my whole life since I was 0. That was a requirement in our family. We had to throw rocks to clear the beach, so I've done that. And that was my father's orders when we were little kids, so I've done it all my life. Anyways, the point is, I continued just to throw rocks to make this beach. And the house situation, I'm rambling, I know. The house, I'm concerned about protecting the house. So that's why there's two issues here. And the protection of the house is why I tried to, build a wall. That was not my husband's fault, it was my doing. And I started trying to do it myself with little rocks. And then I actually hurt my shoulder because I tried to lift 2 bigger rocks. And so the person who helped me is actually a gardener person. It's nothing to do, has never built a wall in his life. But anyways, and then we started to do this, and I got excited because I thought I was, my hope was to protect my house. And I'll say, I'm talking probably too much, but I have to say this. So what happened is, I've lived there my whole life. I love my property. I'm passionate about it. I really don't want to hurt things. I'm very, you may not believe it, I hope you believe me, I'm conservation minded. And after my mother died in early 2000, I purchased a property from my siblings. And at that point, it was way before talk about global warming. They wasn't talking about rising tides and rising. So I put my mother's house was in very bad shape. So I went down and I put a new house on the same footprint. And I put it on the same footprint because I've loved the view and loved everything about it my whole life. So I just put it in the same place, as I say, before global warming. And then, recently, you can't help but notice if I'm sitting if I'm in the water, and I'm looking at the house. If you look to the left, as Dave was saying, there's sort of gouges in parts of the bank down to the left. And I thought, it frightened me. It frightened me because I thought this is going to, if this happens right where I am, it's going to be right up to where those big rocks are. And I thought, I just want to protect my home. So one of my greatest blessings in life is spend this property. I love it, and I want to protect it, and I want to pass it on to my children. So anyways, that's what I tried to do, and I tried to make it. So obviously, I'm not an engineer, obviously. So I tried to make it so I built it up so that there would be stop that erosion, and it's obviously not done to code or properly, but it appears to have, I thought, was doing the job. Now, Dave pointed out that, I'm sorry, I'm talking way too much, but that it wouldn't probably be good in a hurricane, and I'm sure that's probably true because I should point out, there's not a stitch of anything with concrete or anything. I didn't put any things like that. I know you can't do that. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. And I also did not have a single machine ever, because I know you don't do that. Well, hard clam beds would hurt things. I didn't do anything that I thought, well, why would I hurt it? I love the property. I love the land. So everything was done manually, every single rock. And no rocks were brought onto the property, and no rocks were taken away. It's all done what was there. So I redistributed rocks in my mind to help protect my house. And that's what I tried to do. To try to protect my house with the rocks that I that I have on my beach with none added and none taken away, and all done by hand. Obviously, I can't lift these big rocks, obviously. So I had this one gardener fellow, and he brought 2 helpers, and that's how they did it. It did take a long time, and it was just painstakingly done to try to protect.
How long ago did you start it?
That's a very good
Was
question.
it a year?
Oh,
2
yeah,
years?
yeah, probably, because I need to explain. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to build a wall. I told you, I know it sounds weird, but I do. I've thrown rocks all my life, and so I just thought, oh, this is really helping. If I put it up here, look, that's going to, so I wasn't like, okay, now I'm starting a big project. So I started to try to do it myself with smallish rocks, and then I tried to get some a little heavier, and that's when I hurt my shoulder, and it was not good. So that's when so it's just been, oh, this looks, I kept thinking, hey, it's looking like it's looked to me like it was holding. Obviously, maybe it wouldn't in a storm, but it looked like it was doing what I was hoping to do, which was to shore it up so that I wouldn't have the erosion that I could see down to my left, because I want to save my house. I want to protect my house, and I want to pass on this house in good shape to my children. And that's so. I think my intentions were pure.
When
Sorry.
you built the wall, where'd you get the fill that went behind the stones?
There was no fill. It's all rock. It's all little rock. There's no
No,
fill.
there's looks to be some type
Oh,
of
like sand.
rock. The sand behind the stones.
But
Where'd
just
that come
right
from?
there. I took the sand
The
and
beach?
it was all the sand that was, yes, it was the sand and there was everything that I had was right.
Totally understand your need, your desire to protect the particular property, but not done correctly. Is there anybody in the board like to ask some questions?
I'd be happy to answer your questions.
I don't have a question.
No, I understand what she did, but it can't be
Yep.
tempting.
Would you like to go down to see it?
All of you are welcome.
No, but it is substantial. Whether or not we're talking the jetty, whether or not we're talking the 2 different storm walls seawalls that were placed there. One side of the jetty has one and the other side of the jetty has another, but I believe what I'm hearing is that it has to be removed and that a full engineering be done in order to put it in correctly. Because right now you have no basis for it. It just sits on sand. It will be eroded away. But I'm going to ask Mr. Bichette, what's your recommendation?
Well, that was my recommendation because, again, as I explained to Mrs. Anderson, it's just really not structurally sound. And it would not have been permitted in the manner it was in the first place because you can't really build and fill out onto beaches in today's regulations. And the same with the stone jetty. Those are just not things that are permittable in today's world. So I spoke to the owner. She had mentioned she was going to get in touch with GAF Engineering to try to help her work this through.
I called today.
Yeah, and Brian Grady from GAF told me that he spoke with Mrs. Anderson and was going to try to work with her to try to get this on the right track.
So,
We're meeting tomorrow at 9:30.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's possible that when we have a solution, an engineering plan, can we keep the existing stone wall and jetty in place until they can be replaced correctly as opposed to, I don't want to tear it down immediately. I want to say it was there for a purpose. Can we continue it until we have a full engineered solution?
Right, I don't recommend just someone going out there tomorrow and starting to dismantle it, but, no, so she is gonna be working with the engineer and, to hopefully come up with a remedy that's permittable versus what is currently there, so.
Is there a time frame for that?
I would say that
It
in
was
terms
right
of,
there. Everybody saw me.
I would say in terms of a time frame for the engineer, she's going to be meeting with him tomorrow. We don't know the schedule of the engineer of how quickly he can do
Well,
something, but I'd say if we get some letter from the engineer saying he's working on it and that he'll have a plan within, 30 days or 45 days, whatever is appropriate,
Right.
then that's fine with me.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to I'll see
Yeah,
you next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that all right, if we table this until we hear back from a real plan?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it seems impractical to bring in equipment or manpower to remove this and then
Not
not,
knowing what's gonna
not knowing
replace
what's
it with.
coming.
Yes.
Right, it has
Yeah.
to be a restoration.
Right,
yeah.
it should be done in conjunction with a new plan. I mean, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you do want a wall there and some
I'd like to
protection.
I'd like to protect my home.
Right.
That's what I'd like to protect my home.
So, yeah, that makes sense to do
So
it all
so
together.
there's already a substantial wall there in front of the home. There's a big slope stone revetment that
Yeah.
Yeah.
has been there for a long time.
That's been since my parents built the home, the first home, that's always
Right.
been there. And I guess my judgment was, that was so right next to the house, I was just trying to give it a little space so it wasn't gouging right before those
That's why you
rocks.
came in 2009 to work on the left
my
side
husband
of
did.
it
Yeah,
for the restoration, and you can see the cloth is still
Yeah,
there that
yeah.
was used to stabilize the banking, well, you did some plantings, and yes.
Right, and
So I
had-
know you, in 2009, it was, we have to save the house, and that's what you came to us for, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the sort of,
Is that the side where that little, look like ramp?
yes. No, that was the other side. That was the side closer to where we parked, is where they did the previous project to stabilize the bank. It was all done with plantings and some
This is
jute
down there
netting.
where we corrected, did the culvert just before it because it collapsed because of the heavy traffic. And that's where we had a restoration of a pond down there. They cleared
Yeah,
too
he
much
was
and
at
we
the
had.
house. He
Yes,
was at
so,
the house.
okay, you were at the house, okay.
I didn't even know that place was down there.
We're quiet.
So-
Wall, it looks good, it's just not done right.
Yeah.
I think if you have a major storm event, I think it's
Yeah.
gonna disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of work done.
Yeah.
Can I just
So-
add something?
Yes, please, yes,
Yeah.
Judy, go ahead.
Again, my wonderful
Oh, your wonderful
50-year-old map.
picture.
As you can see, this is it's called Little College Pond, or some silly name. The beach now comes to here at high
It's
tide.
filled in.
This
Yeah.
has accreted. This is the house that was there when this picture was taken, and that house was, Tiger's house was built in 54.
Somewhere between, I was born 1950 before me, and probably between 45 and 50.
Okay, so, and you can see that there were in fact groins at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And they had certainly not been permitted because we didn't
Who
do
did-
things like
yes,
that
yeah.
at that point. But you can see what has happened to this entire, this is kind of bluffy in here, not kind of bluffy, it's bluff here. And you can see how it is washing out, and you can see this is an old washout, but this is exactly what she's talking about. This is the footprint of her house now. So her beach has accreted as well. You can now walk from here to here at sort of medium tide and not get wet. So this is now very, very shallow water. I'm just adding that in. It's sort of historical. I'm kind of one of those people who likes
Okay.
old things.
So, we'll leave it to a further meeting when we have some engineering plans to talk, and in the meantime, a $300 fine for starting work without approval.
So moved. Second.
I have a second, all in favor? Opposed, abstain. A $300 fine is our standard fine for doing work without approval, so that's it. But we'll wait to hear the engineering plan. The wall will stay as it is. Please do not, no more additions to it, because I think it's done. And we will keep it up until we can get a strong engineering plan, because what you have would not survive. It will be undercut the first storm we get, because there's no foundation
Yeah.
to that wall.
I obviously didn't know what I was doing.
Okay?
Thank you. So do I give you a credit card, or how do you want me to pay you?
Don't worry about it. Come on over.
Judy will get you through all the,
Okay.
all the paperwork and
Yeah,
everything.
we'll,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for coming
Thanks
up.
for coming.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for listening.
No, you left Florida for this.
Happily. I say this all the time. My heart, I'm a New Englander. I follow my husband's business. That's the appropriate thing to do. So we've lived in Southern California, Texas, and Florida, but I am a New Englander. That's why this property is.
Okay, we totally understand.
Thank
You in
you.
the office tomorrow?
Warmer here than it has been down there anyway.
I guess probably so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a certification of compliance for the Duffys, McDuffys.
Yes, this was for a project that was done on Oak Hill Road. Construction of an addition and a garage to a house at this location. The project has been completed according to the order of conditions, so I'd recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for the project.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay. We have the MACC conference on February 29th. Anybody interested?
Yeah, I just wanted that to be on the agenda so people were aware of it in case they wanted to attend. You know, it's their annual conference. Some members have been to this in the past. They do have some interesting topics. And so, you know, if you go to their website, Mass Association of Conservation Commissions, you can go on and see what all the topic classes are and then decide if it's something you feel like you want to go to. This is something that the fee would be covered for by our funds that we have. So if someone wanted to go, it would be, the cost would be covered. And they've switched everything up now where you basically register online through their website. You don't fill out papers anymore and submit them. So for who's ever interested, let me know and I can try to help get things squared away if you do wish to attend. So that's why that was on the agenda.
Okay. Next was, we talked about the fine. We voted on these fines and violations and.
Yeah, that was
So-
on there just in case there was any follow-up. If not, then we don't need to discuss it any further.
Okay, anything else? Appointments, reappointments? We are coming close to the end of the year. And I think I looked, but I can't remember who needs to be reappointed. But that will be discussed at a future meeting. Michael, any questions for us? We have a guest.
I don't have any answers.
Do you live in town?
I'm sorry?
Do you live in town?
Yeah, I live on,
Yeah, Mike can come up and talk in the mic so we can get it. Mr. White. It's not you, it's the people listening. Okay.
I'll introduce myself for the record. Mike Mercier, I'm sort of new in town, I guess. I live at Lookout Lane. How should I put it? Let's just put it this way. I'm sort of new in town, sort of not. My parents own property here since the early 90s. I just moved here permanently recently from southeastern Pennsylvania. I'll spare you my life story. I'm going through a divorce, so left here, moved up here permanently now. I was in the environmental planning field for a number of years. Worked for the federal government while I was at graduate school down in Maryland for 5. And my mom said, you know what, why don't you just go see what the Conservation Commission's about? You know, just see the topics they handle and just once you get together house one night.
Apply.
I'm sorry?
Apply.
Apply in that.
We have an opening for associates,
Okay.
which means you'll come on the board, you will not have a vote, but you'll have all ready for discussions and hearings and stuff like that. And it's a way to get to know what's happening in town, what we're about. We meet for the first and third Wednesdays at 7 o'clock in this room, and that's about it.
All right, it's been a while since I've been in that field, just to let everybody know. But I do have experience, I do have the basics, basically.
That's all right.
To put it. But even like tonight, it was just interesting just to like hear the, again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you guys have been here for about an hour and a half, pushing 2 hours now. But it was just fun to hear like the old things again. For example, one of the gentlemen over here was just saying, I think was saying things like, you know, containing the
Concrete.
the concrete, thank you. The concrete and, you know, as it's being taken away.
When I was working in DC, I worked for FEMA, which was, and then became the Department of Homeland Security, which was fun.
Not a good name around here now. They just rechanged the
You're
maps again.
right.
They just
You're
changed the
right.
maps again.
You're right. You're right. But at the time it was you're right. But no, it was what, between 99 and 04, which I don't think it was, what, 2010 was when the controversy came out around here, if my memory's correct. But anyway, so no, I'll tell it. I'll keep that part.
Well,
I'll put that down.
If you are interested and you go to the town website, you can get an application, fill it out, and submit it to the selectmen for consideration as an associate if you're so interested.
All right. Okay. Well, hopefully my background then just didn't get you to say, ooh, bad name, go away.
Hell, they let me on. You'll be fine.
Okay, and your background hopefully is not,
Nah, just I was a bio major, but it was a long time ago.
okay.
So.
You're always on a learning curve.
I'm always on a what?
On a learning curve.
And it's a
Yeah.
good way,
You know what? Thank you for that recommendation.
20-some odd years ago, when I got on this board, and I knew nothing. I knew nothing about what was going on, other than that I was a local kid, grew up here,
and knew the area.
and knew the area. And the people that I've served with over those years, the old timers that are now gone, and the ones that are here now, have taught me immensely. And if you're interested and you're concerned about maybe your kids will have a tree to sit under and a beach to go to, yeah, I'd apply. If you got the time,
I
we'll
will
welcome
admit, having lived 7 or so miles outside Philadelphia recently, and then having to come up here, living near the beach, it's like, this is great. What am I? Not that Philly's a bad area, but you get the point. Being outside one of the biggest cities in the country to being much more low key, it's kind of nice now. I'll admit that. So, anyway, everybody, I appreciate your time. Hope
Nice
you have
to
a
meet you.
wonderful evening.
Say hi to your mother for me.
Will do, Miss Slavin. Thank you.
Sandy. Sandy.
I don't want to call you Miss Slavin.
Well, Mrs. Slavin's my husband's mother. Is there anything else on the board?
motion to close.
I have a motion to
Second.
adjourn. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 8.
Good night.
God, 8:42. Thank you, Mr. White.